the last 30 years of software as a subscription has done a great job of digitizing images and texts and PDFs, but completely left like physical buildings behind, right? And so I think that's a problem. There's only so much software you can build before we realize that buildings, like by definition, are physical. And so it has to be a combination of advancement in hardware, software, and people, right? And people working around buildings. These last few decades, there's been massive investments in like some of the low-hanging fruit areas as to like how do we digitize images and documents and things like that. But the thing about buildings is that they're physical. They break, they move, they change, and we need to create like a feedback loop. So software in and of itself, we've digitized blueprints, but folks kind of forgot to ask if those blueprints were accurate to begin with. This is what we're finding, decades later, where there's no shortage of prop tech software out there. In fact, there's many amazing ones being built. The challenge is, how do you create software that has a real-time connection to the built environment? And that's hard, right? Because that, in many ways, or at least today, requires some sort of feedback loop. And that's why I think the advancements of technologies like LiDAR is particularly important and something we should all be paying attention to if you're working in real estate, because what it means is it's cheaper, faster, more affordable to essentially take accurate images of the building. The challenges with LiDAR is that unless you're super technical and understand the nuances of it, the outputs that LiDAR cameras create are often like relegated to like very few use cases. What we've gotten really good at, right, at Integrated Projects is we've gotten good at converting these kinds of file formats that have very low use cases into readily identifiable 3D models and 2D CAD plans, right, that are actually extremely useful, right, for the purposes of renovating a building or acquiring a building and having an accurate set of plans, or facilities managers, understanding the architectural, mechanical, and furniture systems. When I was raising money for the company, this is something that we had to grapple with, was that, including, by the way, like prop tech investors, where I think that there was this pattern matching of like, I guess if you're not a SaaS B2B company with like 90% gross margins, it's weird because we're at a chapter in real estate where I find that there's a misalignment between what real estate is actually asking for versus where all the money has been invested in the kind of last 5 to 10 years. And that misalignment is actually really noticeable. When you talk to commercial real estate and the folks around the table, from architectural engineering professionals to contractors, you hear that they've been like SaaS'd to death. Like there's almost a subscription fatigue. For the last 10 years, they've been promised that if you just use this point solution or that point solution, like, the end of construction, budget fails and construction change orders and things like that, like you'll never, and they've been promised the world, and like construction hasn't seemed to actually evolve much in the last few decades, despite like this increase of software. And now I can't speak for other industries, but yeah, I think one of the realizations is that we're just dealing with like brick and mortar and stuff. And there's only so much that software can do. So I'm excited because I think that there's like a new generation of companies that have to exist where software is table stakes. You have to create world-class software, but that software is in service to or facilitates an actual thing that moves in the world. So it's not new. I mean, I guess the same way, you use Uber as a kind of an interface to, move riders and drivers, or, Airbnb and guests and hosts, or Amazon moving a package from A to B. In many ways, that's what we're suggesting is happening in the built environment as well, right? The same way you can call a driver, you can call a technician to come and digitize your space. That's important. It's not pure SaaS, but it's absolutely necessary in this kind of chapter in real estate. Specifically when you consider that like the commercial real estate industry right now is facing this perfect storm of historical lows in terms of leasing activity. You have historical lows in terms of building valuations. You have new kind of legal mandates to report on your building's footprint and its impact on the environment. So you have to know your building more. Interest rates and building valuations are down. No one is renting your space. You probably are about to default on your loan. And you're asking yourself, what the heck like the world has completely shifted and I'm in no place to like proactively know what to do with the physical space. And what's worse is when you ask these commercial landlords, their core product, like the building, they can't readily answer like what exactly is inside it. Maybe to use an analogy, I guess in the same way that if you have a human body and you can't accurately x-ray it or understand what's going on in its, the body's systems, you can't proactively understand what to do about it. And so buildings are in many ways no different. They have systems like the human body. And what we're suggesting is that now with LiDAR technology and 3D modeling technology, we can understand the kind of, okay, here is what is, so that we can then understand what we should do about it, whether it's redesign the floor plan from, an office that no one's renting to apartments that everyone needs. Or here is the accurate floor areas so that we can determine accurately, like what's the actual impact of your carbon into the environment. There's been so much focus on the what should be. And I think a lot of early software has focused on design and the what should be, but we've kind of completely overlooked like just getting the what is. And it makes sense because it implies that you can actually answer that question accurately. Whereas the what should be, there's a little bit more looseness, right? Because it's more, here's what it should be, here's the proposed. So it makes sense. I think technology started there versus here, but now we're finally in a place where LiDAR allows us to get accurate, more affordable pictures, and then the conversion process into file formats that make sense. We're finally in a place where now both can kind of coexist.